Garchomp. And Garchomp, of course, having those ground-type moves, the only weakness that Muck has, could be really good for him. Tiffany veering away from what a lot of players have done, where pairing the Muck with the Tapu Bulu. Usually they use the Tapu Bulu to keep Muck safe from Earthquake. Now we've seen a quick adaptation throughout the weeks where Garchomp has been taking Groundium Z to try and get around that, of course not affected by the grassy terrain. So it'd be interesting to see if Mitchell's got that, but he's not so scared of it with no Tapu Bulu to keep it safe on Tiffany's side of the field.
All right, and these trainers are going into team preview. So once again, for those of you just turning in, we have Tiffany Stanley versus Mitchell Davies. Tiffany is running Tapu Fini, Muck, Alolan Marowak, Executor, Mudsdale, and Formosa, versus Mitchell's team of Tapu Lele, Formosa, Celesteela, Garchomp, Politoed, and Vikavolt. And once again, the Muck, the Marowak, and the Executor on Tiffany's team are all their Alolan forms.
Very exciting to see. And there's definitely some interesting matchups. I do want to see what Vikavolt can do. Of course, there's nothing particularly weak. It is an electric bug type, so electric attacks are going to be a bit dangerous to throw around with Marowak potentially in the pocket for Tiffany, being able to switch that in and use that lightning rod. But he's not really hitting anything outside the Tapu Fini with those electric attacks, so I think that will be the key to Mitchell's victory if he wants to really capitalize, is can he work around the Tapu Fini? We saw what it did in San Jose for Enosh, and it really is tough to get rid of if you're not overly prepared for it. So I think Tiffany is going to be looking to do a lot with Tapu Fini, while Mitchell looks to do a lot with Vikavolt here.
So it looks like these trainers are ready to get started. We'll have to see if Tiff did decide to bring that Tapu Fini and to see if Mitchell decided to bring that Vikavolt. Either way, I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting match as Tiffany sends out her Tapu Fini and her Alolan Muck as a lead versus Mitchell's Vikavolt and Garchomp. I believe we just saw all the Pokemon we talked about before this match, so good work, team.
Between the pair of us, we cover them all. I think the matchup really favors Mitchell here on paper. Just looking at the Pokemon on the field, obviously Vikavolt puts good pressure on the Tapu Fini, and Garchomp puts good pressure on the Alolan Muck. Vikavolt having that Levitate ability means Garchomp's a little bit freer to Earthquake, so that's very nice. But it's not quite that simple, of course. Two Pokemon in the back for Tiffany. It's an interesting matchup. It looks like you want to bring in Alolan Marowak to get Lightning Rod, but you don't want to switch it in on an Earthquake as well.
So we see Muck protect this turn. Garchomp going straight for that Earthquake, so Vikavolt's going to dodge it thanks to its Levitate ability. It does connect with the Tapu Fini, but it doesn't really deal that much damage. Tapu Fini is still sitting pretty there with a Moonblast back into the Garchomp. This will certainly be a knockout unless that Garchomp is surprisingly bulky. So interestingly enough, we did see the Vikavolt target the Alolan Muck and the Garchomp with a discharge, not going to deal any damage to them, but Tapu Fini is knocked out.
Very, very interesting play. The Disquake combination that we haven't seen rise to popularity for probably 6 years now. We finally see somebody put it together as a really good pairing, the Vikavolt Garchomp, and it takes the knockout on Tapu Fini. Discharge also getting around the threat of Lightning Rod, because it doesn't matter if you switch in Lightning Rod, Discharge will still hit everything on the field. So a very good turn for Mitchell. I think he led that game absolutely perfectly, and Tiffany didn't really have much of an answer to it. So she's going to be fighting back with a Pokemon disadvantage, but bringing Pheromosa here could potentially be a very good answer to that.
Yeah, we see Garchomp use a Earthquake again, moving first on the field. It's going to deal damage to all the Pokemon this time around, but whether or not it's enough to knock out that Muck is to be seen. Muck hanging on with just a little bit of health there, and it activates Muck's held item, which looks like it'll be restoring some health, but whether or not, yes, it's the Ayapapa berry. So rather than a citrus berry, it restores a little more health, which is always much appreciated. Ice Beam from that Formosa to KO that Garchomp, deal that last bit of damage, and activate Formosa's Beast Boost, which boosts its special attack. And finally, we see another discharge from that Vikavolt, unfortunately knocking out the Formosa and leaving Muck in not really the greatest position, but it does connect with a Stone Edge, which misses the knockout.
Well, there was a lot going on.
There was a lot going on in that turn.
We'll start with, obviously, the fact that Garchomp went first. That's information Tiffany needs to take, and Mitchell's showing a card there, of course. Garchomp not usually able to outspeed Pheromosa, so likely information for her, it's holding the Choice Scarf, which kind of makes sense in the fact that he just wants to get this very fast Disquake off. Of course, Pheromosa picking up the knockout in return, but still getting knocked out by the discharge, so the Beast Boost not a threat going forward. We do see Muck is going to be very difficult to take down, of course, holding that Aya Papa Berry. And we do see as well the Stone Edge on Muck, not something we commonly see. That is definitely going to be causing a problem for that Vikavolt staying around.
Yes, we do see Marowak switch in on Tiffany's side of the field. Mitchell sending in his Politoed, so unfortunately for Marowak, its fire-type attacks will not be that helpful here, and it has to watch out that that Politoed doesn't target it with a water-type move such as Scald. But, you know, rather than reveal any more information moving forward, Tiffany forfeits, which I think is a great use of that forfeit feature. You know, it's game one. It wasn't really going that well in her favor when you think about things. She went to a very early disadvantage thanks to that most likely Choice Scarfed Garchomp Earthquake and Discharge combo. So now we're going to see her decide to forfeit and, you know, keep that information to herself and maybe start working on a strategy moving forwards.
Yeah, Mitchell taking a very comprehensive win there. Of course, I think he just led perfectly. Showed off Disquake, which I'm quite excited about, a bit of a throwback for me. And I like the amount of pressure it put down on Tiffany's team. Her whole team kind of didn't have an answer to it. You know, I said at the beginning of the game she relied on Tapu Fini, and that of course just got knocked out in turn one. So losing that was a bit of a problem for her, and I think she's going to have to adapt to this team. Mitchell showing some cards though. It is going to be good information for her, obviously the item on the Garchomp, and just the general strategy of his team, something she can pick up on, and I think she's going to be able to play around this and hopefully take us to a game 3 here.
Yeah, I think if I were Mitchell, I would definitely be thinking about bringing the same lead, though. It may seem sort of obvious, and it may, Tiffany may have the opportunity to sort of adjust, maybe send in that Formosa first, but, you know, it did so much work for him early on, and it's really on her to sort of adjust and sort of show what she can do to stop that. And given how quickly Mitchell, you know, selected his Pokemon going into this game, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that Garchomp and Vikavolt lead once again.
No, it was very, very effective. And looking just down on the paper, I don't know how many answers Tiffany has to it. Of course, with the Garchomp being that fast, that brings a lot more pressure to it. We also saw Garchomp not get knocked out by the Pheromosa Ice Beam, so one of his best sort of, you know,
one of his
assets.
best counters, actually, to things that counter Garchomp is just being able to survive that Ice Beam. We do see the same lead here. Garchomp and Vikavolt out on Mitchell's side of the field. On Tiffany's side of the field, it looks like we see the Alolan Muck again, but this time it's actually the Alolan Executor that's acting as its partner and not... yeah, and not the Tapu Fini like we saw last game.
No, Tapu Fini, obviously something she didn't think did enough for her, so she switches it up and brings Alolan Executor, so that's going to be a slightly different setup for her, and I think this might be a better answer. Of course, Vikavolt does still keep it in check with a Bug Buzz, but not as bad as it was when it was Grass and Psychic, so Dragon helping out a little bit there.
Once again, we see Muck protecting the first turn, and once again, we see that Earthquake from the Garchomp. So this Garchomp is not afraid of anything right now. It looks like Mitchell is going to stick with the same strategy that so-called Disquake, starting off with an Earthquake into the Executor, and Vikavolt, though, switching it up with a Bug Buzz, targeting that Executor. Will it be able to survive? Unfortunately, it is knocked out, and we may never know what that Executor was meant to do.
No, we're not going to be quite sure. Poor Muck, in the past couple of rounds, both games, his partner's just been knocked out on turn one. So Muck trying to pull its weight on its own, definitely going to be up against it. We did see it miss the knockout on the Vikavolt there. Going to be a little bit hard. That's something it really wants to be able to get, and not getting that just shows that Mitchell's team's been trained quite defensively as well. So I think he's hit this really good balance between offense with the combination of Earthquake and Discharge, and defense in the way he's trained his Pokemon to eat up these hits.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I really love how he's used the extra, you know, stat and potential that his Garchomp has. Instead of putting it into speed because of that Choice Scarf, he may have put it into, you know, maybe the HP, maybe the special defense, and giving it this advantage that it needs to just stick around on the field for a couple of hits and survive anything that can take it down. It really allows him and gives him the freedom to stick with the same strategy and force his opponents to figure out, well, I know it's really fast, I know it's going to deal a lot of damage, how do I stop it? And Tiffany's answer might be swaggering her own Muck. Now, thanks to the fact that Muck does make contact with the ground and that Misty Terrain is activated, Muck will not be confused. Instead, it'll take a +2 attack boost, and it survives the Discharge from the Vikavolt. So if this Stone Edge connects, assuming we do see the Stone Edge again, it's going to be massively powerful. Instead, we see the knockoff onto Garchomp, but it holds on with just a sliver of health, dealing some damage back with that rough skin and confirming that it is holding, or it was holding, I should say, the Choice Scarf.
Very, very good play there from Tiffany, showing one of the options her team has. The side swagger, using that misty terrain, definitely to her advantage. Unfortunately, Muck, being one of the slower Pokemon on the field, just wasn't able to do enough, and missing the KO with that knockoff, just not really what she needed that turn. I think Muck needed to be in a position to do a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately for Tiff, though, she clicked in that forfeit very quickly. Losing that knockout was not really something that she was looking for, but it happens. It is only round 2 here of Swiss, and Mitchell is certainly a great opponent to have that round loss to. We saw him do amazingly well in San Jose, and I imagine, especially seeing him just play that combo so strongly throughout the entirety of that match, we'll be seeing him, continue to do well as the day progresses here in San Jose. It's really clever. I love it.
I really like the pairing that he's gone for there, and I think in a way it could be an answer to what he saw in San Jose. Of course, going to be a little bit harder to deal with it with things, hard trick room. If you can shut it down with a taunt, that's fantastic. If not, then it's definitely a little bit harder, but there is one way to deal with it, and that way is to deal with pretty much everything by just knocking it out, just doing really large amounts of damage. So I like how that team was built. I'm definitely interested to speak to Mitchell a little bit about it. We're going to have him in for a player